From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Trapped in a grain bin.
And that's when things went bad.
One farmer's close call and the rescue efforts to free him. Deadline looms, a warning from the railroads on what could happen if they don't reach an agreement with union members. As USDA prepares to release a big report that could turn into a market mover.
And I do think we're going to see lower corn acres come into play.
What we're watching right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Happening later today, we get a new batch of supply-demand numbers from USDA. And the report could be a big market mover. AgDay's Michelle Rook looks at some expected changes and what it could mean for markets.
Clinton, this will be the first report where USDA looks at objective field data. However, USDA's National Ag Statistics Service has announced a change in how they're reviewing and reporting acreage in the September crop production report. They say they'll include any justifiable changes in the estimates for planted and harvested acreage for corn and soybeans, sorghum, and sugar beets. Now, that's a practice they don't normally do until the October report. NASS states it will review all available information, including survey data, satellite-based data, and the latest information from USDA's Farm Service Agency and the Risk Management Agency for planted and harvested acreage for these additional crops. Now, the division normally reviews and includes only chickpeas, cotton, dry edible peas, lentils, peanuts, and rice in the September report. So this is a change.
Instead of doing it in October, they're going to do it now, where they're going to make some, and if they deem it, they will make some adjustments to the acres numbers. They feel that they've got enough information to do this a month earlier than what they normally would.
We're in such a critical point for markets getting the price right that I think that they feel, getting this information out earlier than normal would be a huge benefit to providing that kind of transparency.
And Martinson expects there could be slight adjustments to both corn and soybean acres.
And I do think we're going to see lower corn acres come into play. I think we could see a 500,000 acre, 500,000 acres drop as far as corn is concerned. I would, on the flip side, then look for about a 250,000 acre increase in soybeans.
In October, NASS will review acreage for canola, dry edible beans, and sunflowers. The trade is expecting harvested acreage on corn to drop an average of 125 to 170,000 acres from August, depending on the survey, with soybean acreage up about 80,000. The average trade guess cuts corn yield by nearly 3 bushels per acre, with 170 million bushel cut to ending stocks. Soybean yield is forecast to drop about a half bushel, but carryover would see less than a 5 million bushel increase. We'll preview the report in market analysis.
All right, thanks, Michelle. More than $2 billion a day. That's how much the major freight railroads say a potential rail strike could cost the economy. 5 of the 12 unions involved have announced tentative 5-year agreements. The agreement involves 24% raises and $5,000 in bonuses. A coalition of 31 ag groups sent a letter to Congress last week urging lawmakers to be prepared to intervene to block a strike if necessary, warning that farmers rely on freight rail to transport their goods and that any kind of stoppage would likely lead to the loss of food supplies, driving up prices and exacerbating the risk of famine around the world. Now, around 115,000 rail workers could strike as soon as this Friday if they cannot reach a contract agreement with railroads. In the event of a lockout, lawmakers could vote to enact the White House-appointed panel's recommendations. That's something railroads are pushing for. It's expected Russian President Putin will discuss the Ukrainian grain export agreement during a trip this week. Putin complaining last week the grain shipments from Ukraine weren't going to poor countries and instead being exported to Europe, adding that terms of the deal need to be reworked. On Friday, Russia's foreign ministry echoing those sentiments, saying the deal is being fulfilled, quote, badly, and its extension will depend on how new terms are implemented. Putin is expected to discuss the export deal with his Turkish counterpart this week at a meeting in Uzbekistan. Last month, Ukraine was on pace to ship more grain than it did the month before the war started. A wild weekend for weather, with Tropical Storm Kay blowing in rain and flash flooding to portions of Southern California and the desert Southwest, bringing relief from that dangerous heat. Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joins us, and Matt, the relief is short-lived.
That's right, Clint. We saw some relief from that heat, especially in the southwest, but it is going to get warmer as we head through this week. Still looking at some chances for some rain. Take a look at our precipitation map for this week. We've got more rainfall expected in parts of the west. That includes parts of the northwest and the Four Corners region as well. And then we've also got more rain in the east. Take a look at our precipitation map here through Monday. September 12th, that cold front continues to advance eastward. The storm system in parts of the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley continues to move eastward, bringing those showers and storms. Behind it, a little bit cooler in the upper Midwest, but warm and muggy through the middle of the country, and just a few isolated showers and storms back in parts of the west. And this is why we've got a cutoff low right over parts of the Great Lakes and the Midwest, eastern Corn Belt there, and that's going to keep sliding east, bringing the cooler air with it, but also keeping that unsettled weather. By Wednesday and Thursday, that has lifted on out, and then we're bringing back the warmth to at least the eastern half of the country. Back in the northwest, we could be looking at another trough building in, and that could keep things unsettled for the latter half of this upcoming week. And while some of you may be seeing a beautiful sunrise right now, check out this sunset in Saskatchewan. Evan Priest capturing this beautiful harvest evening. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Close Calls, Stories of Survival on AgDay is brought to you by AGI. AGI offers complete systems and solutions with industry-leading products to meet your needs. AGI has you covered. To learn more, visit aggrowth.com.
On August 22nd, the rural town of Moravia, Iowa became the center of attention. The community of only 600 is where a local man became entrapped in a grain bin while cleaning soybeans out. Farm Journal's Tyne Morgan had an interview with the man who was just trapped 3 weeks ago. He says he's grateful to local fire and rescue, along with area farmers, who turned his close call into a story of survival.
Beans on the north side of the bin were up to the eave, and I was trying to get as much as I could off the north side, but I ran out of greenback tube, and that was as far as I could go.
Cleaning out a grain bin is something Wilson has done more times than he can even count.
So then I tried to turn around and suck some around the door so we could get another door open. And that's when things went bad.
Wilson says that's when suddenly soybeans started to cave in around him.
I couldn't ever free myself, but that inside door was open, the top one, and I grabbed a hold of it, and there was so much pressure that it was all I could do to hang on to that door.
With grain up to his neck and his hands still holding onto the door, Wilson had an idea.
There was a stick inside the bin, and I was able to kind of lunge for it, and with the length of it in my arm, I got it out the door about a foot, and I was just going like that. And he finally seen it and shut the grain back down.
The call went out. It was for a grain bin entrapment.
Ryan Moore is a captain at a neighboring fire department, but he's also a volunteer firefighter at Moravia.
He was responsive, hanging onto a rope. There were a couple farmers in there that had gotten some metal up behind him so it wouldn't cover him up, and had gotten a rope around him.
Wilson was located close to a door inside the grain bin, which also made the situation tricky.
So we had about 2 feet of grain between him and the doorway, and then it went up about 25 feet behind us. As soon as I started talking to him, he's responding with just a calm demeanor and everything. He's not getting his heart rate up.
They just said, yeah, we're going to get you out.
And as they tried to get the rescue tube around Wilson, the team discovered there was a problem.
The greenback tube was next to me, and that prevented them from getting the rescue tube down farther. So the beans that we were taking out, they were coming in about as fast underneath with all that pressure. It's kind of like flowing water.
With him being so far deep in our tube, the auger had to punt on that one and do a little different method. So we ended up having to auger it and hold the bucket inside the tube instead of just augering it outside the rescue tube like it's designed to do. We did it a little different, and it worked for a little bit, but then I think Mark come up with the idea, somebody go get a shop vac.
Wilson was able to use the shop vac to help relieve the pressure around his waist, but they ran into another roadblock.
once we got him loose enough, we were now below our grain bin rescue tube. So the grain from the backside that was piled up so high started sloughing off under the grain bin tube.
And that's when the team was forced to cut holes in the grain bin, the first across from the doorway.
Somebody called for another grain vac, and now we're vacuuming the backside of the tube from 2 different holes, and it allowed us to gain on the falling grain.
Wilson walked out of the grain bin just hours later, and with Life Flight on standby, Wilson was taken to a Des Moines hospital out of precaution.
I had so many beans in my pockets up there at the ER. The beans were everywhere. And I apologized, and they said, well, we've had this before, not that long ago, but you came out a lot better than the other gentleman. I was just lucky, thankful to be alive.
As Wilson's close call is now a story of survival and one they'll never forget.
Ryan, thank you, buddy.
No problem.
Saved my life.
There were plenty of twists and turns in the markets this week. We'll take a look at the week ahead coming up next. And later, Machinery Pete takes a hard look at used combines and what you'll pay if you can find one. Commodity markets rallied hard to end last week as traders prepared for this week's USDA report. Michelle Rook is back with our Markets Today report.
And in with market analysis, Chuck Shelby with Risk Management Commodities. Big update on Friday and all the commodities risk on, and it seemed like the lower dollar index really pushed everything.
I think that was a positive catalyst to get fund money involvement. Certainly lifted all the markets up today, so that was good to see on a closing Friday market.
And the grains positioning ahead of the USDA report coming up today. So let's talk about corn. Average trade guess down 3 BPA on yield. How much do you think we'll see, and how much is already priced into this market?
Well, I think the trade's going to look how far down USDA goes. I think there'll also be anticipation that in next month's report, the yield will go down even lower. The weather has not been favorable for, especially the western states, for grain fills. So whatever it is, I believe the trade will believe lower numbers. If they happen to go down closer to 171, that might be a bullish report in regards that next month in October are going to be lower than that.
So if that happened, Chuck, would that be enough to get corn, December corn, above that $7 mark or not?
I think that would be a push towards 7. That's going to be pretty tough resistance, but I think we'd make an effort to get there.
Soybeans, we're only looking for about a half bushel decrease in yield, but not much change to ending stocks. What's it going to change to move the market one way or the other out of that report?
You know, it's really about demand. That's still a very tight number no matter how you slice it. And it's very, very difficult to, predict a soybean yield. It's a bushel bigger, half bushel smaller. Those numbers are hard to call. So I still think the bean market is looking how much demand are we going to have. The yield's important, but that's a hard number to call.
And wheat market had a very strong close on Friday and technically looks really good now, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes back to the discussions of Putin maybe closing that corridor down. It seems like that become more likely. And if that really happens, game on. Wheat's got a really strong case to move a lot higher again.
Okay, thanks for your analysis. Chuck Shelby with Risk Management Commodities. Full analysis at agweb.com, and we will have ag weather coming up.
Ag Day is brought to you by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator, it's not just any closing wheel. Reach your yield potential. Get 10% off while supplies last.
Look what was spotted in the west, Matt, some snow. The National Weather Service sharing these pictures of the first accumulating snowflakes of the season in Wyoming. Now this is on Powder River Pass in the Bighorn Mountains. But when you look at temperature expectations for this week, snow doesn't seem possible. I'm sure that's the upper elevations though.
Oh yeah, it is. It's going to be warm in the west, but yeah, upper elevations, we're starting to see the cooler air become possible. So we'll see more of that snow over the next couple of months and then eventually all across the country as we head into the winter. But yeah, more warmth expected in the west and then a little bit cooler in the east. And the area of cooler temperatures you see there in the east, that's due to that trough in the jet stream that's moving on to the east and will continue to slide off into the northeast through the middle part of the week. But cooler temperatures associated with a lot of that precipitation as we headed into the start of the week. A little bit warmer out ahead of that system, and then back in the west, starting to build back in that trough at least through most of the week, and that's why we'll start to see warmer temperatures present back there. You can really see this on Monday. Warmer back here to the west, a little bit cooler where we get that dip in the jet stream. And then as we head towards the middle part of the week, that storm system gets on out of here and the warmth comes back, but it will already have been a little bit cooler there in the east. And now we're going to start to be watching the west coast for another trough moving in late in the week, and that could bring some more unsettled weather along with it. Maybe a little bit cooler, especially in the Pacific Northwest heading through next weekend, as you can see that bigger dip in the jet stream coming in there late this week. But precipitation this week above normal there in the west, all the way from the Four Corners up into the northern Rockies. Below normal right down the middle part of the country, including Texas and parts of the Corn Belt. And then above normal in the east, where that storm system is going to be moving through early this week. Here's a look at the precipitation this week. You can see that storm system getting on out of here. Then we've got the showers and storms back in the west. As that trough starts to dip down later in the week, we start to spread out some of those showers. A little bit less in the way of precipitation along the Gulf Coast, but we'll still see some, especially in parts of Florida as well. But here's a look at the precip heading into this week, where we've got above normal as we head into next week back in the northwest, below normal through most of the eastern half of the country, and then temperatures next week looking above normal for most of the country with the exception of parts of California and Nevada. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Mansfield, Ohio, showers and thunderstorms, a high near 72 degrees. Heading to Miles City, Montana, sunny and hot, a high of 90 degrees. And then heading towards Winslow, Arizona, mostly sunny with an afternoon thunderstorm, a high of 86.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
The rules of supply and demand are pretty clear. If demand outpaces supply, prices go up. And as Machinery Pete shows us, used combines are following those rules.
Well, folks, there's no other way to say it. This is the hottest used combine market I've ever seen, and honestly, nothing has ever been close to this. It's unbelievable. Supply and demand is driving the bus here. Now, that can be an ambiguous thing to talk about supply and demand, but it's not. Here's a visual chart from our MachineryPete.com website, folks, a visual representation. So the blue line is supply, and the orange line is demand. People, clicking on used combine listings for sale. And this chart goes back 2 years. So if you look over on the far left, that's the way it used to be. Way too many used combines stuck on dealer lots. But now it's different. You can see that blue line tanking lower while the orange demand line is spiking higher. So that's manifesting itself in rising used values. Now let's talk a specific model, a Case H 7230. Now here's a picture of a very nice one. This sold August 31st on a farm auction in Mason City, Iowa by our friends at the Steffes Group. It was a 2012 model, 2,600 engine hours on it, went for $97,500. Now yes, that's a very strong price, and in fact it's the highest auction price ever on a 7230 combine with over 2,500 engine hours. And folks, you can look at all these numbers, all these auction prices. They're free. Just go to MachineryPete.com, click on auction prices. You can do these filters and these searches just like I'm showing you here. And actually, the 5 highest auction prices ever on 7230s with over 2,500 engine hours, they've all come in the past year. But beyond that, 3 of the 4 highest auction prices were in the last 10 days of August 22. So that's what I'm talking about. This is the hottest used combine market I've ever seen.
Now, what is a wedding without a cake? And this one really takes the cake. Casey Bailey and her fiance Mike have made Hillshire Farm Little Smokies a tradition at special occasions. So to keep the tradition going, they plan to serve the cocktail sausages at their upcoming wedding reception. Now, Casey sent a letter to Hillshire Brands sharing the couple's love for Little Smokies, and the Tyson-owned brand went above and beyond, sending the couple a custom 4-tiered Little Smokies cocktail cake for their celebration. Now, the cake, standing at over 18 inches high, and took 16 hours to make and assemble. The couple, who live outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan, also got a year's supply of Little Smokies to enjoy. And that's all the time we have this morning. I'm sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out in Farm Country.